A new warning from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth about a potential war in Asia.
It has to be clear to all.
At a conference in Singapore, Hegseth said China was, quote, credibly preparing for an invasion of Taiwan. Here on the self-ruled island, Beijing claims as its own a race to overhaul defenses. Mandatory military service and reservist training have been extended. There's a sense of responsibility, this reservist says. Tension with Taiwan is ramping up, with Chinese forces staging regular drills around the island. And the use of force has not been ruled out.
Nearly a quarter of the world's maritime trade goes through the South China Sea, which sits between China and a number of Asian nations, including Vietnam, the Philippines, and Taiwan. In addition, experts say it has large reserves of oil and gas. In recent years, it's also been the site of clashes between Chinese Coast Guard ships and Philippine vessels as Beijing tries to exert its claim to virtually the entire sea in defiance of international law. A confrontation this past week on the disputed South China Sea.
Your unsafe maneuvers are in clear violation of your obligations for safe conduct.
A Chinese Coast Guard ship sideswiped a Filipino government fishing vessel and fired its water cannons. Philippine officials said its vessel was on a routine research mission, collecting sand. But 3 small uninhabited sandbars in the area are the reasons for heightened tensions. Both China and the Philippines claim sovereignty over them. What's at stake is less about the sandbars themselves than about the body of water surrounding them, the South China Sea. Since 1952, Beijing has claimed virtually the entire sea, everything inside what's referred to as the 9-dash line. In 2023, China added a 10th dash off Taiwan. The Philippines, Malaysia, Taiwan, and Vietnam all reject China's claims.
China has lashed out at the United States over a claim Beijing is preparing to invade Taiwan imminently. At a security summit in Singapore, America also called on Australia to step up military spending in a bid to secure peace in the Indo-Pacific region.
Close allies strengthening security ties in a bid to shut China out.
And this trilateral work is truly critical to deterring China and maintaining peace through strength in the Indo-Pacific.
In Singapore, for the most significant security summit in the Asia-Pacific region, US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth issuing a blunt warning that Beijing is planning to invade Taiwan within 2 years.
The threat China poses is real, and it could be imminent.
Comments quickly criticised by China, saying, "We do not accept groundless accusations. Some of the claims are completely fabricated." And later posting online, the US is the biggest troublemaker for regional peace and stability.
Look, I don't accept that. We work with the United States, have worked with the United States and other countries in the region over a long period of time to uphold the global rules-based order.
The United States stands ready to work with any country that is willing to step up and preserve the global and regional peace that we all hold dear.
America's concerns over Beijing backed by Australia.
It's not just the size of the military build-up, it's the fact that it is happening without strategic reassurance.
Also agreeing to consider US calls to boost defence spending.
It's a sentiment that we understand, and as I've repeatedly said, that's a conversation we are totally up for.
Now, what we'll do is we'll determine our defence policy, and we've invested just across the forwards an additional $10 billion in defence.
But defence spending has been flat. They don't plan to increase defence spending until the end of the decade.
That was the backdrop earlier this month for the annual joint U.S.-Philippines military exercises known as Balikatan, Tagalog for shoulder to shoulder. 9,000 U.S. troops joined 5,000 Filipino military personnel for live fire drills.
This type of training is absolutely invaluable to us, to be able to get out here to operate with our treaty ally and to be able to set up a defense like this and integrate all of our systems is just remarkable, and we're really grateful for the opportunity.
Some of the drills could have been sending Beijing a message. For instance, the Philippine province of Zambales along the South China Sea coast was the site of an exercise using a U.S. missile defense system to target drones acting as hostile aircraft. A 1951 mutual defense treaty between the United States and the Philippines commits each nation to defend the other in case of attack. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said the U.S. commitment to the Philippines is ironclad.
There is no effective balance of power in this region absent the United States. But we cannot leave it to the United States alone. Other countries must contribute to this balance as well, and that includes Australia.
Meanwhile, Beijing has condemned the U.S. Defense Secretary's speech at the Shangri-La Security Dialogue, and calling Washington a troublemaker in Asia's regional peace and stability. Now, in the address, Pete Hegseth had said that any attempt by China to take Taiwan by force would result in devastating consequences.
It has to be clear to all that Beijing is credibly preparing to potentially use military force to alter the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. We know, it's public, that Xi has ordered his military to be capable of invading Taiwan by 2027.
Mr. Chubb, help us put what we just saw in context. That clash we saw between the Chinese Coast Guard ship and the Philippine vessel, that didn't just start this year.
Yeah, that's right, John. Those particular reefs and sandbars that were referred to in the report have been the subject of sporadic incidents over the last 6 or 7 years, but there's been a noticeable uptick in the activities and the confrontations this year. In particular, we saw last month China really going public with a sovereignty assertion, with the unfurling of a flag and sort of high-profile news reports laying claim to this particular sandbar, Sandy Key. And the significance of that is that it lies just a couple of miles from the Philippines' main military outpost in the area, which it's been doing some pretty significant upgrades at over the last few years. It's also very near to China, as one of China's major artificially built island outposts. So it's a sort of scene where there's a likelihood of further confrontations if this trend continues.
And why is the South China Sea so important to China?
You've got now the US-China geostrategic competition playing out also in the South China Sea and other maritime littoral areas in East Asia, such as the East China Sea.
A lot of Americans, when they think about this region, they think about China's designs on Taiwan. But could the South China Sea be just as volatile or even more volatile than that?
The short answer is yes, it could. The big difference with the South China Sea and Taiwan is the number of players in the area. So you've got the Philippines, Vietnam, you've also got Malaysia, Brunei makes a claim there, Taiwan occupies the biggest naturally formed island. So you've got many different players operating in the area, and that's before you bring in the sort of extra-regional powers such as the United States. Also the UK has been there recently, Australia, Japan, South Korea has done some patrols there, and other European navies as well have been talking about, if not actually, stepping up to fill some of the strategic gap.
The HIMARS systems are known for being mobile and precise. These are the same systems Ukrainian soldiers have been using to target Russian positions.
Less clear is whether the U.S. would intervene to defend Taiwan. President Trump has said Taiwan should pay us for defense. It's why reservists like Alex Su are teaching civilians to defend themselves.
It's all about the training, because we're training stuck in 1980s.
Much of Taiwan's military revamp is being influenced by the war in Ukraine. Tony Liu fought there as a volunteer and says the biggest challenge here is denial. No one wants war. I don't want it either, he says, but we may not have a choice. Officials in Taipei are looking to Washington for clues, while across the Taiwan Strait, China is watching.